Hello and welcome back to Doing Business in Europe. Our special guest of the day is Kelly Dembski from Accenture.
I'm Kelly Dembski. I'm the Director of Research at Accenture Technology Labs in Sophia Antipolis, which is a group within Accenture focused on bringing new technologies and new technological improvements to our clients. And so we actually, some of the things we do are building prototypes of new ways of using technologies, but also another thing that we do is generate a technology vision for Accenture that talks about how new technologies will affect both us and our clients. And then that's actually what we use as a guide for our research going forward.
Thank you. We would like to know where Accenture Research Labs are located and why.
We talked about some of the advantages of being in different locations, opportunities, and so on. It's also important to realize that having experts in a given context, in a given location, is very important. And so if you look at something like healthcare, you could concentrate all of your experts in a given geography, but then they wouldn't have the understanding or the context of different geographies, of different regulations, and so on and so forth. And you'll end up not being able to do as well. So for instance, we actually had a client come visit our European lab, and one of the events on their agenda was to speak with one of our healthcare experts in the US. And this person actually spoke for quite a while about different innovations that we had worked on within the US context of a multi-payer system and so on and so forth. And the material was quite good, and it was talking about some great work that we had done. But this particular client from their particular country didn't have that system. They had a single payer system that didn't have a lot of the interesting mechanisms that the U.S. has in its healthcare system. So, in some ways, the client walked away having spent an hour hearing some great information that didn't apply to them. If we can bring people into a given context and a given regulatory context, then when they speak to our clients, they'll understand both the technology and some of the opportunities that the technology represents, but they'll also understand how to apply that technology in the correct way for that context.
Thank you very much. Any anecdotes about experiences that have been particularly striking for you as an American working in Europe?
People ask me a lot what it's like to work as an American working in Europe, as an American who spent pretty much my entire professional career in the US and now spending the last year or so here in France. Many anecdotes, many interesting things to talk about, but one of the things that I have noticed is when I work in the areas of collaboration and looking at new technologies for how to get people to communicate with each other more effectively, we look at things like Facebook and other crowdsourcing and fluid sharing technologies. And one of the things that I did a couple of years ago was I helped design the internal Facebook for Accenture. So this would have people's pictures, it would have their background information, and so on. And the point of this was to take 185,000 people from around the world and help them understand more about each other as people so that they could communicate more effectively and just streamline those kind of work processes. But as an American, I was a little bit surprised to find that in countries like France or Germany, the regulations around things like having someone's picture on a company website are dramatically different than they are in the US. So we had to deal with some of the legal considerations around storing those pictures and that personal information on company servers. Now, we dealt with that, and the site runs fairly well, but now that I'm in the French context, I understand more about where those regulations come from and what they're really based on. And so now the next thing I design, I can design with those things in mind right off the bat.
In regard to your experience, how important is it in Europe to have some contextual and cultural knowledge?
Accenture Technology Labs is based in 4 different locations around the world. There's one in Silicon Valley, another in Chicago, one here in the south of France, and then in Bangalore in India. And many different reasons for having the 4 different labs, but one of the things that we look at is we try to improve the way that Accenture collaborates. Now, Accenture has offices all around the world, but when we have 4 labs in California, in Chicago, in Europe, and in India, we become almost a microcosm of that collaboration effort. So we have researchers working in Bangalore who are working with researchers in both Chicago and in California. I spend a significant portion of my day dealing with my colleagues in both Chicago and in California. And so we have a firsthand opportunity to understand some of the pressures that come along with working in a distributed situation. One of the reasons that you would want to work in a distributed situation, given all of the potential problems that might come up, is that when you look at working in a given location, I think there are a couple of reasons for doing that. One is that you want to harness some cost savings that come along with that location. Another is that you want access to local resources in that location, basically people and talent. And then a third is that you want to leverage some local opportunities that are there. And so when you look at what we're doing in India and here in the EU, we're, I think, getting all 3 of those things. In India, we're getting some of the cost savings and access to really smart people. Here in the south of France, the cost savings may not be there, but the access to people and the access to the context of European business problems or access to experts in a given field is quite interesting.
In your field of partnering and innovation, what does one have to remember about collaborations in Europe?
Um, Coming from a background where I have dealt with a lot of collaboration technologies, a lot of what I've been focusing on when I talk about collaboration is the fact that when you have a given population in a given company, and that's all set, you have the building, you have the processes, etc., then you can use technology and tools to streamline that, to make it just perfect over time. And that's a great use of technology. When you talk about something like the enlargement of the EU or anything where you're bringing in more people, you're bringing in different cultures, different contexts, different experiences into that business space, now the use of technology has to be a little bit different. You're not taking a set human process and making it better. You're actually trying to coordinate the human processes in a better way. And this is actually something that's really hard for technologists because they don't think about people often. But I think one of the biggest challenges is as you start to bring in more countries, more experiences, and so on into a given context, you have to be very smart about the human factors side of it so that you can understand what systems you'll have to put in place, what connections you'll have to put in place, what processes to help these people work together in ways that they didn't have the opportunity to work before. And so in the end, I think we can look at technologies, we can look at new ways of collaborating, but ultimately it comes down to how people work together. And the more we can keep that in mind, the better we'll be.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for all this insight into Accenture research and the European location of it in particular. One final question to you would be, how about EU enlargement opportunities? How does Accenture research feel and benefit from those enlargements of the single market?
When you have something like the enlargement of the EU, or anything that really brings people together in new ways, right? You have a tremendous opportunity for innovation because you have a group of people coming together in a new way, bringing in new context, new experience, new ways of looking at things. And so anytime you bring 2 people together with different ways of looking at things, chances are you'll get some innovation out of there because they're able to share different viewpoints with each other. And so getting that innovation, getting those different viewpoints together, and bringing all those people together in the right way with the right human factors considerations, businesses will benefit quite a bit from that. But you have to put all the things in place to facilitate that, keeping in mind that people do have different experiences, and you have to account for that.